Well, welcome again to my basement here in Colorado. It's snowy and cold outside, so I'm dressed up a little bit on the warm side here. And I'm going to get to talk to you today directly about my particular subject of, I would say, expertise on wisdom, as I'll talk about wisdom being the absolute, unchanging knowledge, information of God. This is that eternal truth that Jesus declares that will set us free. And this is my lecture that will connect us to wisdom, which I will do once in a while. This is the School of Godly Wisdom, so that is why we will be talking about the subject on a semi-regular basis, but I want to continue to focus obviously on the Scriptures, because I want you to understand the Scriptures very well. And so today, I think you'll enjoy this one. Again, it will be a little bit on the unique side, but you will gain and continue to see God in a different light, continue to see His Scriptures in a different light, and continue to grow to be wiser and enjoy. This will be my first focused lecture that will teach an aspect of wisdom. I promise there will be many more lectures on wisdom in the future, locking us into a perspective about the Trinity, the Bible, salvation, the Father, Jesus, love, baptism, the Holy Spirit, and the kingdom of God has taken up important lectures up till now. Wisdom is a complex subject, so I have waited to get into it gradually. Today we will talk about absolutes. Although I haven't used the word, we have actually been building toward this subject with these lectures about sin, salvation, the Godhead, the kingdom, etc. These are because these are already absolutes that are in the Bible. Absolutes that will never, ever change. Knowing that there are absolutes when the world denies absolutes helps us to define godly wisdom. We are totally different than the world. The world has no absolutes. Everything for them is relative. Science, everything, even math, they're trying to take away from its simplicity and the fact of the hard truth in numbers. And spiritually, we need to have absolutes, things that we're sure of from God and things that touch our lives directly and that will never change. The purpose of these times together is to gain information, is to gain knowledge. These lectures will give you a pattern that you can use to gain even more knowledge as you study God's Word. This gaining and future study will lead eventually to wisdom. It may not happen in this life, but I promise you it will happen at some point in time in the future. Wisdom is the absolute, unchanging knowledge of God. Wisdom is rock solid. Godly wisdom should be the goal of any learning program. We therefore call ourselves the School of Godly Wisdom. Let me do an introduction before we go any further. Theology is simply the study of God. Theo means God, and ology means the study of. Theology has become the study of the Bible because only the Bible reveals to us the character and the ways of God. God is the most complex of beings. He is unique and one of a kind. There is no one, there is nothing like God. He is beyond us in so many ways, yet He is simple to understand in the ways He has revealed Himself to us to this point in time. God is complex because it's beyond our minds and humans to understand completely. To totally understand God, to completely understand God, you would have to be God. I believe that God designed time, and especially eternity, to give us all the time we need to learn about Him. But even trillions of years from now, we will still have things we will need to learn about God, because He is infinite in His being and in His nature. These 7,000 years of human history on this earth, which we are currently 6,000 years into, only teaches us about God's justice, mercy, and grace. These are the ways God responded to sin and evil. I believe God will continue to take His time to reveal new things about Himself in the next phase of history. Because the angels seem to be fascinated with holiness, I would assume we will be learning a lot about God's holiness in the millenniums ahead. This age of 7,000 years will eventually, and here I will play a prophet for a moment, be called the age of sin from the negative side. It will be called the age of justice, mercy, and grace from the positive side. Sin exposed God for His justice, mercy, and grace. 1,000 years from now, we will look back on this time in human history as being a great battle between good and evil. Sin is attacked by God in these three ways: justice, mercy, and grace. Justice provides punishments and rewards. Mercy provides cleansings to start fresh and new. And grace provides the power and the courage to say no to sin and yes to righteousness. Justice, mercy, and grace are each characteristics of God. They are absolute aspects of His nature. The Bible tells us that Jesus never changes. That's in Hebrews 13:8, which says, quote, Jesus Christ never changes. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever, unquote. This is an absolute that can be counted on. Time itself will always be this current pace. Again, I'm being prophetic as I anticipate that time is absolute. Time has been at this pace since it began when wisdom was created by God. The first finite thing created was wisdom. Time began at that moment. One moment at a time will march forward for all of eternity. What makes all of this wonderful is that Jesus will be physically with us for all of eternity. Let me address the simplicity of God here for a moment. God's character is easy for us to understand. That God is love, joy, peace, patient, kind, and self-controlled are all easy for us to understand. That God is infinite in size, all-knowing, and all-powerful are absolutes. That God is at His very core holy is harder to understand. But what flows from His holiness, justice, mercy, and grace, are easy for us to grasp. We are being changed because of justice, mercy, and grace. God is patiently working out His reversal of sin plan. Sin encroached upon God's good and very good creation, but is being removed gradually with time. Free will got us into this mess, and free will get us out of this mess. Gradually, sinners are coming to faith and deciding against sin. Christians are gaining authority in their own personal lives over sin. In it all, righteousness is prevailing in our world as the body of Christ continues to press forward and press more deeply into good. This is an absolute. By the way, sin doesn't stand a chance. God is pure and holy. Wisdom has remained pure and holy. The heavenly side of the spiritual realm has remained pure and holy. Only demons and this physical realm has been tainted by sin. All of the resources of God, wisdom, and 99% of the spiritual realm, excluding these evil demons that are spiritual beings, all are engaged to help us counter sin or fight against sin. Let me change back to today's subject. Today I will continue to define wisdom in it being absolute. The first act of God in creation was to make wisdom, according to Proverbs 8:22 through 23. Wisdom becomes God's foundational realm for the rest of creation. I know in making that statement, I'm not only being prophetic, but I'm being scientific. Everything was designed before it was made. Wisdom was made so that it could be part of God, with God, to make the plans for all of creation. Wisdom herself, and I'll have to explain the Hebrew language there, calls wisdom a she. So wisdom herself was active in planning the details of creation. Wisdom was a worker alongside of God in Proverbs 8:30. Wisdom is the foundation of the spiritual realm, which leads to this physical realm being able to exist. The creation order of wisdom first, the spiritual was made second, and the physical third had to be in that order for creation to work. The plan then was for a secondary foundation in the spiritual, and then and only then are things prepared so that life can be reproduced and exist in this physical realm. Every part of creation expresses absolutes. God, wisdom, the spiritual, and the physical are all perfectly created. Life is another absolute, unless you want to be a figment of God's imagination, as some philosophers propose. We are here, meaning absoluteness of what is around us. Life is an amazingly complex thing. Foundational to life is DNA, which is absolutely necessary for life. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain the whys of this creation order. But wisdom being called the foundation, that's in Job 38:4, in Psalms 102:25, and in Proverbs 8:29, at least indirectly, is foundational to earth's creation. Wisdom is foundational to the spiritual realm. This opens the door for us theologians to take a place superior to the scientists. They have their instruments and theories, but we have the Bible. The Bible makes absolute statements about creation that is above any science book. Yes, I do believe that what is taught in the Bible is superior to so-called scientists. Evolution isn't science, it isn't science itself. It is a theory about origins that tries, but from its very nature, to contradict the Bible. I'll personally take the story of the Bible over any scientific theory. The Bible trumps the revolutionary science. Creation is an absolute. God created heaven and earth. God created from nothing everything that exists in the spiritual and in the physical realms. The idea that life came from some muddy pond is ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Life is way more complex than a few random chemicals coming together. DNA isn't formed by any natural process science is aware of. To be honest, it takes less faith to believe that God made everything around us than to believe that nature itself made life. We are not some cosmic accident. Evolution is pure foolishness. Creation, like wisdom, is an absolute that we can count on. The details of creation are clearer to us now than ever before. The complexity of the atom shows us the planning that went into creation itself. I like seeing scientists explain how a huge explosion a few billion years ago created such a complex material that we have, particularly the complexity of the atom itself. Explosions do not create order and complex material. Explosions create destruction and disorder. Evolution has to depend on a Big Bang theory to get life in complex structure. The atom is very complex with quarks and miniature quarks and parts. Those are parts of the atom. Science postulates years ago that the atom would eventually be understood as subdivided into smaller and smarter particles that would eventually we would find what is called Higgs boson, a particle so small there was nothing smaller within the atom. It became known as the, quote, God particle, unquote. Basic to all atoms are quarks and leptons, 6 types of each. These are the building blocks for all atoms in the universe. 1 billion times smaller than these quarks or leptons is this Higgs boson or God particle. In between the quarks and leptons are smaller and smaller and smaller particles. Do you get the complexity that is even in the smallest thing? And we can't even see on it in a microscope. The smallest thing there in the atom, and God continued to make and made the complexity of all of the material that we appreciate in this physical realm. My point is that the complexity of the atom tells us that God created all things and not some big bang. Complexity points to being planned and created. Wisdom is the start of God's plan to make this physical realm where life exists and can reproduce. I always laugh at science proposing that a cell began in a mud puddle that also was able to reproduce. I mean, really. So the miracle of life in some pond requires a 1,000,000 times bigger miracle, as that cell must duplicate. It must reproduce. The foundations of creation, wisdom, and the spiritual are complex, and the complexities advances even further into this physical realm. Life, even simple life, is very, very complex. Humans are God's crowning creation. These are absolute truths. What makes wisdom as a realm very special is that she thinks and she understands all of this complexity. I will eventually explain why wisdom is a she, but for now the Hebrew for wisdom is in the female case. Wisdom is smart enough to entertain God or delight God, according to Proverbs 8:30. God created wisdom, not as his equal, but as his partner in planning creation and even planning the solution to the invasion of sin into their perfect creation. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Nothing confused or challenged God when sin or evil came into creation by the pride of Satan. From God's perspective, this was a challenge, but not a huge challenge to him to overcome, and teaching humans and providing for us a means and a way to be godly by being full of love, joy, peace, patience, and kindness, and self-control in our lives. The simple plan is that his son Jesus will have an eternal bride. Having a great relationship with God has always been the goal of creation. Wisdom is a partner to God, and we are a partner specifically to Jesus as the spiritual bride of Christ. Soon, just becomes the challenge we face every day that makes us stronger. Sin just becomes the challenge we face every day that just makes us stronger. Sin becomes the victory that builds our confidence as we become all God wants us to be. Early in a Christian's life, sin posed a huge problem, but with maturity and success, it became manageable and points of victory are gained. How victorious one is over sin is a personal decision. I can't absolutely claim that a person can be sin-free, but why not try or give it your best shot? Being a godly man or godly woman is awesome. You will eventually be sin-free at some point in the future, so why not pray to be the greatest Christian ever? If this isn't, I'm not saying this to put pressure or condemnation on you. It is to encourage you to be what you can and believe God for his very best in your life. Let me get directly into my definition of wisdom. Wisdom is the absolute, unchanging knowledge of God. Wisdom does not change. We learn, we change, we grow, we gain wisdom, but wisdom itself is absolute. Wisdom is rock-solid truth. Human wisdom is just advanced knowledge at best. Human wisdom is the best we can do with the IQ that has been given to us. We humans are specks by any measurement, meaning that we are small mentally and physically. We only have a few billion brain cells. We are very limited beings. Give me a moment to compare wisdom with knowledge. Knowledge is just raw information. It is like a baby that hasn't grown up yet. It's like water that flows in any direction without much that defines it. Knowledge that is tested over time and challenged by experience becomes understanding. Understanding has definable structure. Where knowledge is like water, understanding is more like jello. It has something still changeable and adaptable, but having structure that is clearly defined and understood. But wisdom is rock solid, never changing truth. Knowledge is 1,000,000 times inferior to wisdom. We are living in the information age. We can communicate lots of information very quickly. Studies are done that take thousands of hours to put together. Interviews are dissected for information. And after all that work, another study is done by someone else that directly contradicts the results of the earlier study. It is just information that has to be cooperated by a lot of other studies to establish a fact. Medicine, for example, has learned a lot about the human body. It is known that current medicine is 25% wrong. In 5 years, 25% of medicine will totally change. They believe they know everything there is to know about the heart. I would think they would say the same about at least a few of the other organs. They have reached a point of understanding what probably is near absolute. They still don't know everything about cancer, but they are getting closer and closer to understanding it, and at some point their understanding will be absolute or wise. There will be a cure for cancer when the point of wisdom is reached. The last frontier of medicine is the brain. The brain is super complex. Billions of cells that create memory loops. These are cells that contain memories. Memories are what exactly to a cell? How the brain works is still theoretical, but they are making progress with their knowledge, this information about the brain. It's like the atom has a God particle, which is the smallest building block of an atom. God designed human cells to connect together in such a way to remember images, languages, smell, feelings, and all kinds of other stuff. We humans have finally figured out a computer which is basically a bunch of on and off switches that contain information. Computers are totally dependent on humans to input data so it can output data. Seemingly our living cells can do something computers can't do: think and emote. We have emotion. Computer can do complex calculations, but it can't reproduce the complexity of the human brain. The brain is superior to any computer, and that continues to be an absolute. Eventually, you will begin to hear scientists talk about exploring the soul. They may not call it that. The foundational part of the brain is our soul, deeper than anything physical. But they will claim they have found the central part of decision-making and personality. When they start talking this way, which they are not at this point, you and I will know they are making progress in understanding the brain. This will be one of the greatest challenges ever, but I propose that, I'll talk about it, I'm sure, here next. From what I've studied about the brain and the soul leads me to believe that our decision-making part, which houses our personality, is spiritual. It is our permanent part. It seems to reside just behind the eyeballs, just right there behind the eyes. It is said that the eyes are the window to the soul. Feels like my conscious mind or awake mind is right near my eyes. Science can't find our conscious mind in our brain, or at least they haven't found it yet. Look at any drawing of the human brain and you won't see a part labeled conscious mind or personality, or this is the place where decisions are made. Seems to be right there, but they can't find the decision-making part of your brain physically. Therefore, it has to be spiritual. They can't find where in the brain your personality is. Just accept it from me. That is your soul. You can't find it because it's spiritual. God made us physical and spiritual beings. That is from the Bible, and that is absolute. Knowing all there is to know, understanding how knowledge works in various systems, is what I define as wisdom. When truth is absolute, you have reached the point of not being able to learn anything else about that one thing. You have therefore reached the point of wisdom on that one issue or subject. So our knowledge is increasing in all aspects of life, but we have a long ways to go to reach absolute truth. It's fun to learn and explore God's creation. Even our knowledge of the Bible continues to grow, mature, and become better defined. We are heading toward wisdom, and in certain things we are doing well, and in others it will take the miracle of Jesus himself being with us to teach us more clearly. I have already talked about Jesus being the wisdom of God in our earlier lecture on Jesus. Jesus is the final word, or logos. Jesus concludes or is the finish of so many issues, as he is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end in Revelations 1:8, Revelations 21:6, Revelations 22:13. Jesus being the conclusion links him again to wisdom. The conclusion of all truth is wisdom. Jesus is the answer. Jesus was begotten, not made. Jesus is 100% God, 100% wisdom, and 100% human. Jesus is unique beyond our ability to understand. Jesus is the firstborn, Colossians 1:15, like wisdom, which was created first in Proverbs 8:22 through 23. Jesus is fully man and deity. Jesus is fully wisdom and deity. Jesus is the God-man wisdom. Wisdom herself is complex, but understandable as a pure realm that is the foundation of the rest of creation. Wisdom is a realm, and wisdom is rock solid, the absolute final truth. James 3:17 says godly wisdom is first of all, or most importantly, pure, meaning that the first realm of God's creation has remained undefiled by sin. Wisdom contains no foolishness or lies. Pure, as I have explained in other lectures, separates wisdom from the spiritual, as it is mostly pure. Evil spiritual beings do exist. The way every realm handles sin is interesting. Wisdom resists sin in total. Spiritual beings mostly resist sin, but when they did sin, they only defiled themselves. They didn't defile all of heaven or the spiritual realm. When Satan, a spiritual being, entered this physical realm, did nothing to taint our world. But when Adam and Eve sinned, it defiled or tainted all of the physical realm. Sin actually multiplied here, which means that righteousness also multiplies here. Everything reproduces in this realm, which again is an absolute. I will do a long closing that begins now. This will be the heart of this lecture. Humans believe in relativity, that all things are gray, that nothing is black and white. Humans believe that nothing is absolute, and they are absolutely convinced that there are no absolutes. For most people, morality is relative. Everything is in flux. Nothing is truly good or bad. Everything is just part of a mistake of a big bang when everything started. We have no purpose or destiny, humanly speaking, from their perspective. We are all just a blob of tissue and brain cells. When we die, it's all over from their perspective. That is human religion. That is what most elitists believe. Therefore, they will do anything to get ahead. Money is their power and their God. If you were to ask them, they would tell you they are smarter than God because they don't believe there is a God. So they believe they're smarter than the nothing they've made of God. They don't believe they will be held accountable to God for their actions. Everything is relative in their idea of things. I think this whole idea of living in a relative universe came into being with the theories of Einstein that postulates that mass, energy, and time are all relative and flexible, making it conclusive that our universe or physical realm is based on relative movements of mass, energy, and time. To reject Einstein's theory is pure heresy to science, but as I study wisdom and her place in creation, it becomes obvious to me that God didn't design a relativistic universe. Einstein's theory of relativity postulates that people traveling at different speeds, particularly one would be traveling close to the speed of light, he or she would not age as quickly. Time was therefore found to be relative or changing because of speed. Doubting this theory is comparable to doubting that the earth is round. I believe that the earth is round and also that time is fixed and absolute. There are absolutes. The pace of time itself is absolute. God fixed time at this current pace within his creation. The Bible tells us that Jesus holds everything together in Colossians 1:17. Time could easily be part of the glue that holds physical matter at the atomic level together. God is absolute in his person. Wisdom has remained pure. Again, James 3:17. Our absolute time is absolute. Morals are absolute. Truth is absolute. Morals are not relative. Moral laws are not flexible. Standards are not adjustable to meet our needs. Sin is sin. Rebellion to God is rebellion. God didn't create a universe upon a changing, adjustable foundation. God created a universe that is absolutely solid. God created us humans to have a great relationship with him. God absolutely wants each of us to be the best that we can be. We can depend upon and put our faith upon this God of absolute, unchanging truth. The standard of love is the highest morals. All cultures can understand that doing the right thing means that we do what is best for others and not just ourselves. The moral code in the Bible and the Ten Commandments can be taken to a higher level in love. These are absolute truths. Being honest, kind, and patient are absolutes. Having a relative morality has led to realizations, all kinds of humble or rationalizations, all kinds of horrible behaviors. Christians must stay strong and solid in our beliefs that God made a universe full of absolutes. This leads us to staying morally strong in immoral times. Math is my best example of absolutes. 2 + 2 is 4. Always has been, always will. 3 will always follow 2 in sequence. 0 will always mean there is nothing. If you have 2 apples and 2 oranges, you will have 4 fruit, but you will never have 4 bananas. These are absolutes. Math as a discipline is structured and final. You can solve the same math problem 50 times, and it will always have the same result. If you make a mistake, that doesn't mean that the math is relative. Every bank accountant will tell you that every penny is accounted for each and every day with each and every transaction. Those who don't believe in absolutes can't consider the financial world of absolutes. I love I don't know what word I have there, the inclinations of theology and how things fit together. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. helping to increase our knowledge of how things work spiritually. I love studying that. We can grow in our understanding of the Bible because its truths are absolute. The truths of the Bible are designed by God for us to understand and study. Will we be able to figure out something in the Bible on this side of heaven? Probably not. Will we be able to discuss these truths with angels someday and learn more? Yes. An extended conversation with Jesus will add even more information. But is there a final and complete answer to every question and every problem? Yes. We give one final example of the distortion and lies of this modern relativism on the subject of gender. There are absolutely only two genders. God made us in his image, male and female, according to Genesis 1:27. There are not 3 or 50 genders, no matter what science or psychology or philosophy says. It is insanity to be born a man and later claim to be a woman. And a man can be attracted to whatever sex the other person is, and it doesn't change his gender. There's world's attempts to distort God's image and distort God's decision in making us male or female. Relativism is a direct assault on God as the creator and judge. Only God is above gender because he designed it. Males are XX in their chromosomes. Females are XY in their chromosomes. Males have testosterone while females have estrogen. What could be clearer? What could be more absolute than two genders? I do believe that when Jesus said we are like the angels and there's no marriage in heaven in Matthew 22:30, he's saying there's no gender in heaven. The angels are spiritual beings that can't reproduce and therefore do not need, nor do they have gender. So gender is a temporary human state before we get our spiritual bodies. Our spiritual bodies will be gender-free, I assume, like the angels. We won't be being married. Finally, wisdom is absolute, final, unchanging truth. We don't deal with absolutes in this understanding of God's world very often in science or other disciplines. We are heading in that direction as Christians. We are becoming better and better as we commit ourselves to loving God and loving others. We are learning our place in God's eternal kingdom. Personally, I want to be a godly man of faith and wisdom. I strive to be gifted by wisdom in all I do and say. I want to be known as a wise man. I am honored to try to teach you something of value that will draw you closer to God. I believe that trusting God, the God of absolutes, is a good place to be. God bless you again, and we will talk to you again later. Keep growing, keep learning, keep gaining this awesome stuff, wisdom, this information about God and his word. Bye-bye.